This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
Five Questions
with Dan
Schawbel.
Ted, welcome to Five Questions.
It's a pleasure to be here. Shoot.
Why did both your high school guidance counselor and father think that you were going to work at a grocery store?
Because they didn't know that still water runs very deep, I think. And I think my mother had different ideas. My house was a matriarchy, and the guidance counselor was not enlightened at all, and it taught me very early on why public schools, are an issue. It's motivated me to get very involved with charities and scholarship because I see how difficult it is for public schools and counselors essentially to understand what the potential is, and that sometimes kids get left behind. And I was told with my parents I wasn't college material. And then I went to Georgetown and graduated first in my class. So you couldn't have gotten further bad advice.
Well, and you were the first in your family to go to college, right?
Yeah, first to graduate from college. And but that was a very powerful motivation for me to continue now. I'm chairman of DC Cap, which is the largest scholarship program for public schools here in Washington, DC. And we embed counselors into the school, and then we offer scholarship to basically get kids to graduate and stay in college and graduate from college. So to me, it was the most transformative thing I could do was go to the best college I could get to and graduate. And it also powered a lot of my counterintuitive philosophy of don't believe the experts, because pretty much everything that my parents were told was wrong.
In high school, my creative writing teacher told me not to become a writer. Thousands of articles later.
Yeah.
Multiple books, bestsellers later.
You know what?
So not everyone knows everything, right?
Yeah. The counselor's name was Beatrice, Hoar, and it became Be a Whore. That was you can't make that up, right? That's like out of a Hollywood script, but that was her name.
What education and experience did you receive while working at AOL for 13 years that helped you as a business person and entrepreneur?
I bring it even further back. I told you in our preamble that my first job out of college was with Wang Laboratories in Lowell, Massachusetts. And Wang was a alternate thinking attacker brand. IBM was the blue suit. No one ever got fired for betting on IBM. And IBM was traditional, going after men who were making all the decisions. And Wang Laboratories was liberating women on the first real graduating classes of women out of college going into the office. And Dr. Wang was a Chinese immigrant and made word processing. If you can believe it, he was the real inventor of let's get rid of the awful work that women were doing in organizing the office and typing and doing the little whiteout. And most of the senior management at the company were female. And I saw the power of being attacking, of unlocking, if you will, a wider audience. And it became a populist brand. And we wanted to be not just for the high priests of MIS and info purchasing, we wanted to be relevant to the largest audience. When I started my first company, at the same time I started my company, I became mayor of my town. And it was, let's be populist, let's open this up, not be elitist, let's include instead of exclude. Florida also, where I became a mayor, had sunshine laws, which today we'd call it transparency, being able to have radical transparency. And then when my company that was founded in Florida was acquired by AOL, I said, oh, I know what this job is. We are the fastest growing city on earth. And I was mayor of my town. I wanted to serve everybody, and AOL had all of the issues that a big city would have, right? We had to have connectivity, good running water, if you will. We had to have no crime on the streets. And if we could keep the community safe and sound, then they would want to come into the city and spend money on entertainment and games and sports. And that thread has powered everything that I've been involved with, that there's a necessity side of the business that you have to take care of. And then there's, if people trust you and feel safe and secure, then they can love you and spend money on things that, I want to go into the city and dine and eat. It's very relevant to today with what's happened in our major cities post-pandemic, right? Economy's slow to open, crime is up. And, I advocate that we're back to basics, make us safe and secure. And if you feel trusted, then you can be loved. People will work with you to spend their time and their money with you. And that all grew out of my first job experience at Wang Laboratories. And that thread went all the way through my entrepreneurial career, and then went to AOL, and then translated totally and perfectly in sports.
Yeah, it seems like that's a big connection point. And I think there's like this TED formula for how you operate in all these different business environments. And there's a set of principles that you continuously apply to each different business that you have.
Well, having a playbook is, I think, a wise thing for leaders, because if you have a playbook, people know what to expect from you and how you'll do things. But the playbook has to be changed, the vocabulary by generation. I've gone from boomers, TV generation, Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, and there's a lot of nuanced differences for the playbook. It has to change, but at the heart and soul of things, we're social creatures. We want to be respected. We want to be trusted. We want to fall in love and stay in love. And so what I've tried to do, especially with succession planning and new young managers or young people entering, is to say, major in the majors, make sure that the things that you value, that you continue to value, and that you can hire people, create businesses that reflect those values. But don't be so rigid that you kind of lose pace and relevance with new generation of buyers, new generation of employees. And that's a big challenge. I think what we see in our country today politically, I think most people feel that our leaders have gotten too old. They've lost their relevance. I'd like to, I want to, you try to trade your best old players a year before they become irrelevant. That is, I think, really, really important to not outstay your welcome, if you will, and to make sure that the pace of things are very different. In our preamble discussion today, we have the exact same background. I think you and I look at the world, just because of our backgrounds, in the same way, but you deliver it in podcasts. You may not know this. AOL, we were the first podcasting company. We bought a company called Spinner. Spinner was essentially trying to liberate and make everyone a podcaster, that you should be able to self-express and use the internet. And, young people like you have harnessed that, the platform, the methodology to really build an audience, build the business, but you feel good about yourself because you're able to take all of the things that were important to you and turn it into your business and your life's work. So good for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. What do most people get wrong about networking that you haven't? And how has proper networking led to new opportunities for you?
Well, I think that for me, going back to have you ever taken a Myers-Briggs exam? Right?
Yes.
So I took that exam, I think when I was in college. I was an ENTJ, right? I was extroverted and intuitive and thoughtful and judgmental. And whenever there's a big decision to be made, whenever there's a crisis, I kick into E, which is short, a short way of saying I'm going to network. I'm going to talk to as many people as I can, just to get that energy, that input, their diverse teachings to me. That's what the E in the networking does. But then you take your N, your intuition, to process it. You're relying on your experience, but then you have to be thoughtful. It's very hard to be thoughtful with all of the noise that's being delivered to you. There you need contemplation. There you need solitude to be able to get all of that signal that you've been receiving to get the right way, and then you be judgmental. And I have found that, I've gotten higher on the E and higher on the T as time has gone by. And networking, to me, it starts very, very early with your family and your friends. I gave a commencement speech on Friday at American University, and Bill Gates gave one. And I was really surprised that Bill Gates' commencement speech was the 5 things that I wish my commencement speaker had told me. And he said, networking begins in school with who your friends are. And he talked about Paul Allen. I have a picture of me with Paul. No, it was really touching.
It's great.
And it was a really wise thing that I had never heard from Bill, that friends matter, that deep friendships and that network that you create really starts at a young age. That he met Paul first week at Harvard. He didn't graduate from school, but that friendship allowed them to create Microsoft, which is multi-trillion-dollar company. So to me, the networks are being extroverted, getting lots of energy, but having family, friends, and a deep long-term relationship, that when there's a crisis, when there's a big decision to make, to be able to rely on them to get straightforward info is really important. It's also relevant. There's a big thing happening in the NBA. There's a player on another team who's gotten in trouble with a friend, right? There's these videos that are out, and there's a big discussion on choose your friends wisely, because there's a friend who's been involved with a player and has already cost him $40 million. Okay. It's like, is that a friend? And then there's all the discussions on networking and friends on. I'm full up. I've been full up for, I think, 10 years on Facebook. I have 5,000 friends. I can't
You're
bring
called
more
a whale.
friends in, right?
That's the term for 5,000 friends on Facebook, a whale.
But my commencement speech was, they're not my friends. They're my audience. You can't have friendships with anonymity. You can't fool yourself into thinking I've opted into this network and that the people that are speaking to us online through social media, that we're having a meaningful relationship. And then I talked about the bigger societal issue that we're about to face on AI, right? We're hearing a lot about AI and all of the positive that it'll bring to us. But AI, the machine learning is all being informed by what we're putting up on social media. And so if we're putting up bullshit onto social media, the machines are going to be full of shit.
Yeah, you're going to get more of that.
They can only process back to us what we're inputting. And ironically, I've gotten off of social media. I'm not tweeting anymore. I'm not active on Facebook anymore because, one, I believe that the secret of success will be to form your own opinions, to be able to thine own self be true. And we're just creating this gigantic group thinky kind of world that a machine is starting to say, oh, that's what the public sentiment is. Oh, that's what's important. And I've decided I don't want to be a part of that anymore.
Yeah, and it also makes you stand out. But I think the other principle that you like to talk about is helping others without immediately asking for something. And I think that's kind of the key to forming strong relationships in a world where there's a lot of self-interest. Everyone's like, oh, just got to close this deal now, or gotta get something right now.
Yeah.
By helping other people, people are more likely to reciprocate, and bonds are going to be built.
Yeah. And that, I think, comes from your background and my mom and dad. But then it also came from my first big reckoning in life. And, trees don't grow straight up to heaven all the time. Their branches are going either way. And, I was raised in an immigrant poor Greek family in Lowell, Massachusetts. And it was essentially, they didn't go to college. So it was go to a good school, get good grades. If you get good grades, you'll get a good job. If you get a good job, you'll make a lot of money. If you make a lot of money, you win, full stop. And so that's how you're programmed. Like you, I graduated very early. I think I was 20 years old. I graduated from Georgetown. And a couple of years later, I started my first company and I sold it and made a lot of money. I declared victory. And then I got on the wrong airplane. And very sobering when you have a reckoning, and reckoning, small, medium, and large. Some will break your heart. You won't meet an expectation. But I thought my reckoning was, oh, I could die. And we had 40 minutes as this plane was circling, make an emergency landing to do our inventory of where we were. And there was a lot of angst on the plane, as you would imagine, very clinical on, taking stuff off the top of the plane and essentially moving people around to do weight distribution. And they tell you to brace. And people were praying, people were crying. And I was not prepared for this at all. I was young and I had won, and now I had to deal with it. And so I started praying. Seemed like the right thing to do, but I had lost my way with spiritualism and being religious. And my first thought was, if I'm having a conversation with God, God would say, oh yeah, now you need me. right? Now you want to tune in and have me do something. I said, I'll revert to type if you let me get through this. I'll leave more than I take. That was my negotiated deal. And obviously we made it through. And now I felt responsible on, hey, I cut a deal. What does that mean? And so it was, I'll make my list of 101 things to do before I die. I want to play offense. And then I realized that was not fulfilling and meaningful. And it was, well, how will I live a life with meaning? And how will I build businesses that have meaning? And how will I attract people that view as a currency meaning, happiness, not just money? I've since learned, well, you got to give them money too, right?
Yeah, that's important.
And I've made probably 4,000 millionaires in my career so far, through AOL, through my partnerships. So I've had to have that balance, but I do think that meaning and injecting social responsibility and finding ways for individuals and employees and friends to be part of a collective that gives back ends up being a winning formula, as opposed to, let's go to Wall Street and work at Goldman Sachs and, get a big end of year budget. I don't think that people are finding a lot of meaning in that anymore.
Definitely not. And what are some of the guiding work-life principles you've given your children that have led to their success and happiness?
Family first. There's no decision, there's no meeting, there's nothing that is as important for the rest of your life than something that has to do with your family. The greatest compliment I was paid, I mentioned to my son how he should be now a dad that does everything with, he just had a daughter, is pregnant again for a second child, who's a grandchild. And I said, don't be like me, where I was building America Online. I was very engaged in this big goal of let's make the world's most valuable media company. And he said, Dad, I can't remember a time when you missed something that was important. I honestly can't think of that. And I was reflective and said, yeah, to be honest, I was able to build the company. I was able to buy the sports teams and participate in the teams, but I still went to all your baseball games. I still took you to hockey practice. I still was able to go and take you to school, to the museums. In fact, the book I wrote, Business of Happiness, I talk about going with my son in his class to the Library of Congress. And I was one of the two parents who took the kids to the Library of Congress. I felt guilty. I lived in DC. I had never been to the Library of Congress. And they've got the great works for the Declaration of Independence and every version of the Declaration of Independence and the edits, right? And they've obviously digitized it for people to see, and was able to see what was written. And the only paragraph that was never edited was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that was amazing to me. It wasn't life, liberty, and the pursuit of stuff, right? Our founders of the country said that happiness was a founding principle. And I again tied that back, connected the dots, and said, Zach, if I didn't take the day off from work and go with you in your class as a tour guide, if you will, I never would have experienced that. I didn't even know it existed. And that's powered like a lot.
And what's your best piece of career advice?
Believe in yourself. Don't believe in experts. I think that I'm an only child, and that's
I am too.
There you go.
The few, the pride. I've done like 12 in my life, including you now.
And that my parents, my mom was just always pushing independent thought, develop your own values, believe in what your gifts are. And when you outsource that, there's a lot of people that speak with conviction and they shouldn't be listened to, but you get seduced, if you will, by expertise. But at the end of the day, you have to be responsible for your own decisions, for the life that you're making. You can't outsource that. And I think that does come from being an only child, no one else to talk to, and you have to make your own decisions, your own calls. And so I don't think you have to be an only child to implement that, but that's the best advice.
Well, that's great advice. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, good for you. Thank you. I'm proud of you. Way to go.